Merry Christmas Eve and happy Vlogmas Day 24. Today, I thought it would be nice to sit by the fire and just kind of have a relaxing vlog. I'm going to read a story from the Christmas Gothic Short Stories Gothic Fantasy book I got last Christmas from Barnes & Nobles. I picked one out that I thought would be nice to read, and let's do this. First things first, just to make it easier to read. All right, here we go. This story is called Gray Christmas. I'll never forget the first time I saw the gray one. I had seen the stone cottage on the hill just outside of our village and had once asked my father who lived there, for I had seen a light in the window and knew someone must dwell inside. "You mustn't ask about that cottage, Esther," is all my father said. But I wondered about that cottage and who had lit the light I saw glowing from within. Then, one day when I was at the market, with my mother, she suddenly gasped and pulled me away into an alley. "What is it, Mother?" I asked, but got no reply. All around, I saw the other villagers ducking into alleys or behind walls, grown-ups hiding like children. I was about to ask my mother again what was going on, but then I saw him. He walked with a limp. He leaned on a cane that looked like it was made of bone. He was hunched over and took very small steps. In his hand, he carried a burlap sack. He was thin. He was tall, even hunched over as he was. His head was bald and crisscrossed with scars. His left eye was pale blue, like it was dead. His nose was long and bent to one side. His mouth hung slightly open as though he could not close it all the way. He was old. His long beard was gray. His skin was gray. Everything about him was gray. "Who is he, Father?" I asked that evening as I was helping clear the dinner table. "We call him the Gray One," said my father, with the reluctance of a parent who is forced to answer a question he wishes had never been asked. "He's the man who lives in that cottage on the hill." "Mostly he stays up on his hill," added my mother, "but once a month he comes down to visit the market. I guess even monsters need to eat." "Monster?" I said. I was surprised. He didn't look like a monster to me. He looked old. He looked strange. But he was nothing like the monsters in the stories I had heard. "It is best that you put the Gray One from your mind, little one," my father said. "Yes," my mother agreed. "Let's have no more talk of that terrible man." I tried to do as my parents said and put the Gray One from my mind, but I found I couldn't. From my window, I could see the light in his cottage at night. Some nights when I couldn't sleep, I looked up to see if the light was there, and if it was, I talked to him, told him about my day and why I couldn't sleep. I knew he couldn't hear me, of course. I may have been a child, but I understood that much. But it made me feel better to talk to him. From then on, Mother was careful not to let me leave the house on the Gray One's market day. But every time we went, I looked around, wanting more than anything to see him once again. The weather got colder, the nights got longer, and soon a blanket of snow and ice covered our village. I thought of the Gray One often as the winter came on. Alone in his stone house, I never saw smoke from the cottage's small chimney. I worried he wasn't warm enough. At last, it was Christmas Eve. I was so excited for the following morning that I knew I would never be able to sleep. Instead, I sat at my window and looked up at the Gray One's home. I saw the candle in the window go out. I had seen this many times before and thought that the Gray One had gone to bed. I was wrong. Just as I was turning away from my own window, I saw the door of the stone cottage open and the Gray One step outside. He locked the door to his cottage, though I couldn't think who would want to go inside, and began to walk very slowly down the hill. I couldn't control myself. My curiosity took over. As quickly as I could, without waking my mother and father, I pulled on my boots and my cloak, and I went outside to follow the gray one to wherever he was going. I crept out of my house as silently as I could. I didn't know what my parents would say or do if they saw me, but I knew they would be furious. I followed the gray one from a distance. It was difficult because he moved so slowly and I didn't want him to know I was there. I tried to stay to his left, the side that had the dead eye, so that even if he did hear me and look around, he would not see me following him. He led me to the graveyard. Why wasn't I afraid? I should have been. I was alone at night in a graveyard with a man the whole village called a monster. My own mother and father had warned me to keep my distance from this man. Everyone I knew fled from him when he was doing nothing more dangerous than buying bread and cheese at the market. But as a child in that graveyard, I felt no fear. Not even when he spoke to me. It's awfully late for a little girl to be out on her own, he said. It was an old raspy voice, a gray voice, like an old gate, rusty from lack of use. I'm not on my own, I said. You are here with me. The next time you want to follow someone, wear softer shoes. I heard your boots on the cobbles a while ago. My name is Esther, I said. What may I call you? What do your parents call me? They call you the gray one. He didn't say anything. I moved closer to him. He was standing at a stone, looking down on it as though paying his respects to the occupant of the grave. I was standing right alongside him now, his right side, the side with the good eye. I no longer needed to worry if he could see me or not. Who is it? I asked. I thought perhaps it was his wife who had passed away, his father or mother, an old friend perhaps. I don't know, he said in that gray voice. No one does. I looked down at the stone. It was old, very old, older perhaps than the village itself. Whoever was buried there had died long before anyone in town had been born, and time had worn away the writing on the stone so that it appeared small and blank. I don't understand, I said. If you don't know who it is, why are you here? Because I don't know, he said, because no one knows. I come here every Christmas Eve and I seek them out, the stones without names, the stones of those whose families are long gone, the stones no one comes to visit. I spend my Christmas with the nameless dead. But why? He pointed to the unmarked grave at our feet. There, he said, right down there. Only 6 feet away from where we stand is an old box full of bones. But those bones were once a man or a woman, maybe even a child. Someone rejoiced when they were born. Someone sobbed when they died. In between, there was a life. Long, short, happy, sad. We'll never know. But they were alive, Esther. As alive as you and I. And one day, a faraway day, they'll ring the bells and sing laments for you. People will weep as you are lowered into the ground. They'll cry for you and pray for your soul. And afterwards, someone will come to visit your grave for a while, until they too are laid to rest. And time will wear away your stone, just as surely as it did to this one. The years will erase your name, and there you'll be, another box of bones the living have forgotten. He was talking about my death as casually as if we were discussing the next day's weather. It's not the sort of thing one normally says to a child, but I don't believe I was shocked or horrified by what he said. I suppose young though I was, that I understood I would meet death myself one day. I had seen the seasons come and go, seen puppies grow into hounds, seen flowers bloom and wither and bloom again. This was not even my first visit to the graveyard. So there must have been a time when I understood that death is the price we all pay for the privilege of living. What must it be like, that moment when we, as young children, come to that haunting realization? Can any of us remember it? Or is it not something that we learn? Are we born with some quiet voice that reminds us that our days are numbered? Like the soft, almost imperceptible ticking of a clock in a distant room, never letting us forget that time moves in one direction and cannot be slowed nor stopped. In any case, there I stood, a child, shivering in the cold of a bitter December night, standing next to a man my mother had called a monster, and he was telling me that my body would die and decay and that I would one day be forgotten. I tell you again, though, I am sure you won't believe it, I was not afraid. That's why I seek them out, said the gray one. Why I come to see them every year on Christmas Eve, because I can't bear the thought of them being alone. Not tonight, at least. But you are alone, are you not? I said. He nodded. Your people, the villagers, they hate me, they fear me. They don't know you. They don't care to know me. They see my face, my eye. They see what I am not like them. They see that I am not like them, and they call me a monster. And that is why I don't care to know them, why I keep to myself, why I stay up on my hill and only come down to buy enough food to last another month, why I prefer the company of the dead. It is only the living who are cruel, child. I am alive, I said, and I don't hate you. I'm not afraid of you. No, he said thoughtfully, I suppose not. Later, he walked me home. He stayed on the street outside my house until I was safe inside. Then he made his slow, steady way up the hill to his home. It's funny. I remember so vividly what passed between myself and the gray one that night, but I can recall practically nothing of the Christmas morning that followed. I must have been looking forward to that morning for weeks, perhaps even a full year, but it came and went like a flash of light from a flickering candle. Here for a fraction of a heartbeat, then gone forever. But that night, after the presents had been opened and the songs sung and every last crumb of the pudding devoured, I was back in my room, and again I looked up the hill to see if there was a candle in the window of the stone cottage. When I saw that there was, I dressed hastily as I had done the night before. I crept through the house and found a sack, which I filled with old blankets, a pair of my father's old stockings, a few candles, some kindling, a loaf of bread, anything I could find that I thought he might need, but which my parents wouldn't miss. I moved quickly but quietly. Then, when the sack was full, I snuck out and climbed the hill. I knocked on the door. I waited. The gray one opened the door. No one has knocked on my door in... What are you doing here? I couldn't bear the thought of you being alone, I said. Not tonight, at least. The people of my village lived the rest of their lives secure in the knowledge that the gray one was a monstrous old hermit who spoke to no one and lived his life in well-deserved solitude. None of them, not even my own parents, knew that he had a friend who crept up to his cottage whenever she could, a friend who made his little stone house more comfortable, a friend who, every Christmas Eve thereafter, joined him on his visit to the forgotten dead of our little graveyard. But the clock in that distant room never stopped ticking. I became a woman, then a wife, and soon I will be a mother. But before I was any of those things, I was a little girl who followed a monster into a graveyard. The cottage on the hill has stood empty for many years now, but I still visit him every Christmas Eve. There you go. Thank you for joining me for a Gothic short story. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and have a wonderful Merry Christmas Eve. I'll see you again tomorrow for our last day of Vlogmas 2023. Bye, guys.